Here we go. Who said that I wasn't coming? Only a few minutes late. Welcome, everybody, to Flat Earth Nation. Mudflood was Armageddon. It is a Flat Earth Nation. Mudflood was Armageddon. Don't let them tell you anything else unless they're willing to debate you in a fair and honest way. What a way the Lord is moving, the Spirit is moving. I hope you all saw the new video this morning by Conspiracy R Us. I was checking it out and something popped into my mind. It reminded me of how do they power the Starforts, and when was the reset and everything else. It's going to all tie in. Let's see if you're curious. The way I got to this was from the Bible verse in John 18:18. Did a Bible study about the crucifixion of Christ last night. We don't endorse Easter as absolutely a Christian holiday, but the crucifixion of Christ is something that should be marked, and it's always a good time. What caught my eye last night was a charcoal fire, because we've been wondering and we've been talking, about uh, coal burning, the industrial revolution, the deforestation. Why did they cut down the trees? They just needed more power, more railroad tracks, and you can't make steel without coal and coke and blast furnaces, because wood and coal doesn't burn hot enough by itself. But yet they had a charcoal fire when our Lord was being crucified. Well, he was on trial and ended up, how the synagogue of Satan washed their hands and said, let his blood be on us and our children. Surrounded by a charcoal fire. Now that's a busy time. Give me 1 second here. But that'd be one way to warm yourself. Now let me. So we got that. Good morning, Laura. I'm so happy I have my first chatter in the chat, and looks like two lurkers. Hi, lurkers. This is going to be a powerful convincing of what a movement the Lord is doing. And I don't think there'll be any doubt about it. Now, when I woke up this morning and saw Conspiracies Are Us, I was talking to Tommy. We had just finished doing something around the house, sat down around 6:30 in the morning, and Conspiracy R Us had a video up. It's about circular buildings and things like that. So if you haven't seen it, I think I have it pulled up. That's an extra one. So here's a picture of what I was reminded of. Let me make sure I'm sharing. I'm still sharing. So I know this is redundant for you, Laura, because you're here. But for those who's coming earlier, wake up, do some chores around the house with Mr. Tommy. We sit down to, smoke a joint in the morning because we both have bad back, spinal fusion. And at our age, keeping up with the karate experts that we hang out with, we got to stay in shape. So we're sore all the time, and we run across Conspiracy R Us, one of, I think, the most underrated content providers alive today. And so I was telling Tommy, I think I'm going to do another show, because I've done a show on gasometers, and they reminded me of what Static in the attic is going to be showing. And here they're building a tower, a dome on it, because this is being turned into a residential. Look at those body parts laying there. Residential housing or something. Give me more details, please. This is a Vienna shimmering gasometer. What'd you call me? So it's in Vienna. The 4 gasometers, each with an internal diameter of around 63 meters. That means it's tall, almost a mile. Height of 75 meters, that's probably about 2 miles, and a capacity of 14 Googleplexes of gas. And it was built in 1896 and probably through 1899. You know, I was just having fun with you with these meters. I really know what a meter is. Something to do with meters. So they shut them down in the mid 80s. How long ago did everything change? Man, it's the municipal gas works at Simmering. Simmery, Simmera, Simmeraha. We don't want any small ones, so I think you have to hit it like this. There's one in Philadelphia. This is perfect Starfort stuff. They find these old things with metal frames and say, let's go. Let's do it. Well, that's what they did at the shimmering thing. Why do they keep showing the other didn't I click on this one? Man, what are they doing to me, man? Hey, there's one. That's a cool looking one. That's called Old Gasworks. No, that's the Hotel Wasserturn. No, it looks like it was an old gasworks refitted, and like they turned the one into Vienna into condos. They turned that one into whatever it was. This one they disguised to look like a castle. That's their favorite thing. This one too. Their second favorite thing is to make prisons into castles, or castles into prisons. You know what I meant. There's another castle prison. That's just a picture, a tall castle prison, very tall. That's where you put your Rapunzels and whatnot. So let's look at conspiracies are nuts. So let's make sure I'm sharing. Here's what I saw. Oh my goodness, did I see Big James Breeden is in the house? Watch out. This guy could bench press 14 of himself. Welcome yours. Good to see you. So yep, we're on to gasometers. Yeah. Now he was talking gasometers. Now I don't know if he compared them to straight up the way to power a Starfort. Now that's what I'm going for here today. So let's just see where he got it and where I got it from, because I thought I got triggered on this is how you form a Starfort because of these redecorated gasometers. Did he ever take it to gasometers or the cycloramas? Now, if you thought of it, it's because you thought of it too.
Hello. Hello everybody and welcome back for another video. Today we're going to be talking about cycloramas, the virtual reality of the 19th century. Now me personally, I really do enjoy looking at structures and different fads, architecturally speaking, from the 19th century, because when we look into our history, primarily in North America, we find a lot of structures that they tell us were built at a certain point in time, like for instance, Kingston City Hall in Kingston, Ontario. And I've shown this example in previous videos, but up until even 1910, you could, in the back of this City Hall, you could see 2 rows of windows. But then at some point, they created this courtyard in the back, this sunken courtyard, and it exposed this 3rd row of windows. And if you go to the sides of this structure and to the front, you can see a portion of these windows. So there was some event in our past that covered this structure with layers of earth, and it's not accounted for in the history of the structure. And we find like portions of cities with varied levels. Sometimes they have explanations, they being the mainstream, but sometimes they don't have any explanation. In the case of Leavenworth, Kansas. So with that as a backdrop, we're going to talk about this architectural fad with regards to these cycloramas. And all a cyclorama is, it's usually like a polygonal building on the outside, but on the inside, what you would do is you would just sort of stand in the middle of it and on a raised platform, and there would just be this giant mural, like a painting on canvas, and it would be of a scene depicting like a prominent event, like the crucifixion of Jesus or the Battle of Gettysburg, for instance. And that was it. That's what they tell us anyway. So I started looking, and I think there was 17 of these still around up until 2019. So I don't know.
What Tommy added to the party was it was possible with these railroad tracks and everything else that they're showing is that they would bring the elite of the orphan trains or the orphan train leaders out there and give them a bunch of flicker rates and just brainwash them with sigillistic magic painted into the messages here on these things, and then send them back on the trains ready to do their work, thinking they got rewarded on a holiday.
I don't know what the current count is. So I started looking into these cycloramas, and I think Chicago, there was 3 of these permanent cyclorama buildings in downtown Chicago. Pretty impressive looking just on the outside. But
now, don't those 4 look like the Vienna ones that they just did some extra adding to it? That's what they did. They just embellished some, but they were gas bags powering the Starfort cities hidden in plain sight. That looks like a gas bag in the window.
I really didn't question their function at this point. I was just kind of going over some of these structures, and primarily these were located in Europe, North America, and also Australia. And this was one that was in Australia, and this particular image is from 1928. So they were this phenomena of these structures. They can be found in several different countries on several continents. So I was looking into these cycloramas, and I came across this particular one that's in Belgium, and it's sitting right next to this artificial, conical artificial hill called the Lion's Mound, and it's got this monument on the top.
It's a native mound.
This is all supposed to be in reference to the Battle of Waterloo. But in addition to this monument and this conical hill, you have this cyclorama, and it's got some arches on it. And also what I noticed is that there were train tracks running right next to it. And why that's of interest to me is because there's another structure that looks very similar to these, and it's associated with railroads, railways, and I'm going to get into that in a second. But I started noticing some of these cycloramas right next to train stations and railroads. So this is just another image of this particular cyclorama that would have been back here somewhere. Here's that Lion's Mound. But I came across another one by Quebec City, this town. There's this basilica here, and there was a cyclorama here. And also this was a train. I think this railway still exists, but the train station, I think, is gone. So I found an older photo, and here's that basilica. Here's the railway. So yeah, you can see the little train station here. And this was an interesting structure. Nicely had a little antenna there, but yeah, this isn't here any longer. So I just started noticing at least some of these cycloramas were right next to these railways and train stations. And I came across one in Toronto. Toronto had one of these cycloramas, which I think it got demolished in 1963, but it served many different functions over the course of time. Here's the cyclorama right next to us, a couple of train stations and railways as well. So here's just another image. Here's the cyclorama. And at one point it was a machinery showroom. And here's just a map pointing out the cyclorama next to the old station, today's Union Station. So where I'm going with this is that there's another type of structure that also kind of has these arches, and it's next to railways, and it's referred to as a railway roundhouse. And it's just a building with a circular or semicircular shape used by railways for servicing and storing locomotives. Now, I believe this particular roundhouse is in London, England, and it got repurposed. At one point, it was they would have concerts here, and I think they renovated it. I think it's got multiple purposes it can be used for, but this place still exists, but it was only used, we're told this one was built in 1847, and it was only used for the purposes of storing locomotives for about 10 years, and then it became obsolete, we're told, for that function anyway, and so they repurposed it. So I started wondering if there might be a connection between some of these cycloramas and these railway roundhouses, because when I started looking into these roundhouses, I found that a lot of them, their lifespans were short-lived. And there's this high-speed railway line that's under construction in the UK, referred to as the HS2. And during the construction of this railway line, they're finding all sorts of things that are buried, including they found a buried roundhouse. Now, they didn't have any photographs of this roundhouse, which we're told was built in 1837, but they based on measurements they took on site, they created a model here that you can see in the upper right. But yeah, so
yeah, and it has a power station attached to it, because I think it was for gas. I haven't heard him mention that yet, but he's only halfway through.
They uncovered this roundhouse, but we're told it was intentionally demolished after only a little over 20 years of use. So I find that really, anytime anything's buried in the 1800s, I'm interested. But during this HS2 project, they're finding all sorts of things buried, including the remains of a Roman town and a funeral site, an Iron Age funeral site. So a lot of interesting things being unearthed, including a roundhouse. And I found articles talking about other roundhouses that have been unearthed, some of them unexpectedly. So it's interesting. Now, tying it back to cycloramas and going back to cycloramas, there was one that was in Indianapolis, and in this particular image, you can see the Indiana State House is shown in the center with the cyclorama building on the right. Now, the cyclorama was demolished in 1903 to make room for this Indianapolis traction terminal building. So, this building was a major interurban train station. So again, I was looking into these cycloramas and possible connection to these roundhouses, which are associated with railways and trains. And this particular cyclorama gets turned into one of these interurban train stations. Again, not proof, but it's an interesting connection. And I've got another image here just showing some of the train tracks going into this traction terminal of this Indianapolis traction terminal building. So interesting to me anyway. Why would they misrepresent what some of these structures are? Like, why would they not just call this, if it's a railway roundhouse, why wouldn't they just say it's a railway roundhouse? Like, why misdescribe it? I can't be certain, but a potential explanation might be that there was a previously existing network rail system in place. Maybe it was partially buried and it doesn't fit the timeline or the narrative.
Now, I do believe that there were millions of pre-existing railroad lines buried. There would have had to have been. But I think the answer for this, because we see other working roundhouses and they don't need this elaborate, I believe some were redecorated as, cycloramas, and others were decorated as, like in Vienna, apartment buildings or showrooms or whatever. Just brick them up and say, we did this.
for this particular city or this part of the city. So what you could do is you could just relabel it as a cyclorama. Potentially, like I don't know if that's the case. This is sort of my initial research into this. I'm still looking into a lot of aspects of it, but I found some of the connections interesting. So I just wanted to share that with you guys. And just even the whole history of trolleys and in a lot of North American cities, these horse and mule drawn trolleys, I think it's all suspect, but that's just me. So I think that's all I have to share with regards to these cycloramas, but I want to touch on something that I found in Japan, speaking of railways and
Yeah, let's check it out.
things that weren't necessarily photographed. That takes us to Japan. So let's talk about it. Japan, all right, baby, I'll sleep by your side. Things are easy when you're big in Japan. Baby, Japan. Okay, so while looking into railways and railroads, I came across some interesting information talking about the rediscovery of Japan's
Bon, 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 bon. It's a Starfort, baby.
first railroad embankment. And here's just another photo of it. And this railroad embankment, it was rediscovered in April of 2019 during construction work around a pre-existing railroad station. Now, we're told, according to the official narrative, I believe this embankment, which would have had its own railroads sitting on top of it, it was built in 1872, I believe, and then at some point, they intentionally buried it, covered it all up, and created all this extra land. And it was forgotten about and then rediscovered. Now, I find that very interesting because when they looked at historical documents, they were able to infer from these documents that the embankment once existed. So we get this a lot with things from the 1800s. They're rediscovered and then they go back and they're able to infer that they existed. And it very well, the narrative that they're presenting that they intentionally buried this railway embankment, it could be the case, but I find it questionable. And their railway system, their railway network was pretty much all established during the Meiji era, this roughly 45-year period of modernization, westernization. Now, what's interesting too is like when you start looking at the rapid development of their railway systems, you start looking at the photos and you don't actually come across photos. You come across these colored prints, these wood block prints. So there was this process where they would apply color to these wood blocks, and they were cut in such a way to cast an image onto a print. And so you would apply color to the block, and then you would apply the print to the colored block, and it would leave an image. And they had several blocks, so they could create these prints. And a lot of the modernization that occurred during this period of time, the Meiji era, a lot of that was captured with these woodblock prints as opposed to real photos. So here's one of these woodblock prints showing what the embankment looked like. Not a photo, but a print. And here's another one. So again, it's an interesting phenomena. You know, you've got this embankment that gets rediscovered in 2019. They're able to infer that it existed, and the evidence for it.
Did you see what washed out? Look at how it looks like it was going to make one of those points in a Starfort on the other side.
That gets rediscovered in 2019, they're able to infer that it existed, and the evidence for its existence is primarily these prints. interesting stuff. And of course, they also had these horse and mule drawing trolleys.
All right, that is the main man, the guy who makes good videos. Conspiracy RS. We were going to look at that. You know, they had charcoal fires. Where, you know, where's charcoal? What's everything else coming at here? Hey, look at this guy. It even says Tubal Cain on his shirt. He just has a couple of good pictures.
In a recent video of mine, I talked a little bit about these structures, which are called gasometers. I think more correctly pronounced gasometer. I'm not totally sure on that. I will probably continue to mispronounce it. But anyway, these are pictured here in Chicago in 1906. There's three of them there. There was one in my hometown. And these devices store natural gas or artificially produced gas, like coal gas, until it can be used. They raise and lower depending upon the amount of fuel in the chamber. So I thought these are interesting devices. A lot of people seem to enjoy that in that video. So I'm going to attempt to make one here in the shop. And
I guess he does. There it is.
Gas is being supplied.
There you go. He's lighting up a candle over here. So I think these guys are up. I interrupt this. Hey, I'm interrupting now just for something because I used to be a warehouse manager and I would be so upset if my warehouse burnt down.
Taylor Farms fire. No indication of arson just as yet. They're still getting it under control. Then they'll have the investigation of how it started. But you probably did not hear about in the last 24 hours the warehouse fire in Miami-Dade County. Also, another warehouse in El Paso, Texas also went up. Just over 24 hours ago, a warehouse in Philadelphia went up. And several days ago, another warehouse in California went up, a UPS warehouse. Yeah. And a few more days before that, a Sacramento warehouse went up in flames too. And then, of course, we have the fire that happened at the major distribution center for online fulfillment in Indiana, just not too long ago outside Indianapolis. We had the big domino fire last year that took out the sugar processing plant in Baltimore. And I'm just doing these off the top of my head after those last couple in the last 24 hours or so. But we just have a lot of these fires happening, right? We had that warehouse fire over in Taiwan. And just one after the next, these major distribution warehouses are going up in smoke, quite literally. And with all that, these things are going to have a significant impact. The fact is that this is not how often warehouses tend to go up on fire, right? This is unusual. Whether it is nefarious and there is a grand scheme, or whether it's not nefarious, it's going to have the same effect. And that same effect is simply this, is that the supply chain that's already strained to the breaking point is going to get strained even further. Things are not going to show up at your shelves. Are you prepared?
We're going to check this out.
What happened? Oh my God. Oh my God.
Did you ever see that bombing? That silos hold something like 10 years worth of food. I've heard between 3 and 10 years. This was August 4th, 2020. Took down their food supply with fertilizer bomb. They were grain silos. This was their food for that country. Yikes, did he do that? So anyway, how are they getting this charcoal and stuff, right? What's up with all that? Well, first they needed coke, not that kind of coke. You get coke through destructive distillation, not good, you know. Destructive distillation is a chemical process in which decomposition of unprocessed material is achieved by heating it to a high temperature. The term generally applies to the processing of organic material in the absence of air or in the presence of limited amounts of oxygen. Now, think of Anton Lavoisier, the steampunk genius who first put wood in a glass jar and burnt it with a magnifying glass and found out it weighs the same and then got bumped off in the French Revolution. Steampunk founder. Goes back to the 4th century in ancient China. Does coke necessarily make charcoal? 1589, they had a patent to start making iron and steel and melting lead with earth coal. So we have this year to deal with, but it still smelled good, you know, at the end of what, you know, or the start of the golden age for real. Who knows when they really started? I know it wasn't 70 AD, which they account, you know, whenever the sacrifices quit being offered because of the abomination of desolation and the fact that Jesus prophesied not one stone would be left on top of another. Was it closer to 589? Should that be, I don't know, closer to than what we call 70 AD? Who knows? But it goes back to what they have to admit was, you know, at least they say 1603. Hugh Platt suggested, let's get some coal going. Let's char it. Let's act like we just invented it. And guess what? Because they invented it, because it would help beer taste better, it was considered an improvement in quality and brought about an alteration which all English admired. Give us that extra heat so the cold quits ruining our beer. It was called pale ale. 1703. I'm in my world, I think they perfected that at the end of the golden age, because in 1711 Satan is loosed, and that meant it was the time for the reaping of the wheat and the tare. But the blast furnace, 1709, Abraham Darby established that to produce cast iron because you needed to do things like that. All right. But without that cast iron being somewhat inexpensive, there would have been none of this. Our modern world that we look back on, I wish we want to make America great again. All because of coke and all because of a charcoal fire when Peter was a denier, but only for a short time, because he's a pillar of our faith. We've seen the beehives and we know how much the beehive meant to the people in Mormonville, in the beehive state, and the Freemason world they live to protect. Man, that's good. I wish I was writing that down. Then they got their steam locomotives, all from this. We're learning this today because we like conspiracy R Us. We do. Admit it. Please. It was part of a Starfort, baby. And they built on some foundations, and then they had to rebuild other foundations, and then they could rebuild it and turn it into a modern apartment if they want to, because it's going to last. And they are lasting. I believe this is a modern picture, not one of those woodcuts. So they had these, and then this one didn't get knocked off, so they got an extra level over here. Had to brick up this corner. See, they didn't, this is a keystone. I don't know. Hey, Starfort, baby. Coal mining and coke burning. We got to get charcoal. We need coke at Cokesdale, This is the absolute middle of nowhere now. But for all this power, they must have built more than just the railroad tracks. I'm telling you, there's another one, the Cherry Valley coke ovens, built around 1866, because Starforts take power. Dunlap coke ovens, Minorville coke ovens. Hey, coke oven, there's your historic Redstone Coke Oven District, standing tall and looking like you're ready to go right back into business. Sydney Tar Ponds. You need gas in Sydney? We'll get it this way. Boom. Boom, shakalaka laka, boom. Hey, woodcut. No, it's not a woodcut. This is a postcard depicting coke ovens and coal tipple in Pennsylvania. State of the first radio broadcast, I think, in the United States, that they said, hey, we got radio now. Pittsburgh, I believe. There's your Hannah furnace in Detroit. There's this isn't a gas bag. That's a coal bin. They shoot it up there and they shoot it up here and they go burn it in here. Way to go, man. Leave the thing there. Coal gas is a non-flammable. Oh, it is flammable. Gas is fuel. It's made from coal, naturally. Natural glass, United Kingdom, United States, gas works. Gas works. Well, we looked at some of those gas works. This is another one you can tell it's been redecorated. But it was the industrial plant of the world, and they're still fighting over it in Ukraine and Russia today. Like, you got to buy my gas. No, I got to get my own gas. We got oil. Oil is better. Well, some people say it is, and some people say it isn't. They're fighting over it in other countries. They're coming for ours. They like it. We got coal gas. Anyway, they've been using it a long time. Here's some mantles of coal gas. I guess we don't get to look at those. There's your the ruins of a German synthetic petrol plant in Poland. Well, there was a war and they were kind of in Poland for a while there. I'm not kidding. But about the time of the fiat oil petrodollars, all of these coal-based town gas production went from these millions of therms down to barely nothing. Nothing. Oil's better. Straight up. What is this? Charcoal. Was I supposed to look at that yet? What's this? Forgotten fuel. Gasworks Park is the world's last remaining example. So I thought maybe we could look at that. Hey, there's a picture of the gaswork. It remains, and it's been there since 1821, and it's still working, I think, or it's remaining anyway. Synthetic gas. Wyatt Earp's friend, Doc Holliday, was a balloonist and an inventor. Nope, this is TSC Lowe. He perfected coal gasification and your modern Google balloon. Here's a gaswork over here. It's not a silo, but you could dress it up and sell it as condos on the lake. You got the frame, you got the foundation. Do it. Do it. Want to learn more? Okay. Fire whistle. Charcoal. This is what they were burning at when the Lord was on trial. Charcoal. We'll look at it first. We'll comprehend it never. Look at it burn there. Hey, now you can go make yourself some pale ale beer. Hey, look at those girls. Oh, look how beautiful they look with their head coverings. Man, no wonder this guy is showing out, right? Trying to show off, man. That's an abandoned charcoal kiln near Walker, Arizona. This is a magnified piece of charcoal. Even if you don't think so, it gets cooler. Not that much cooler. It is supposed to get bigger. Oh, there it is. Where'd the big go? That's charcoal. It almost made it through the fire. It looks like some of it might make it through the fire. I don't know. There's little pieces in there. Some of you people worried that it won't make it through the fire. Maybe this part, even coal leaves the ashes. Ashes to ashes. High grade Japanese. Of course, everything's better there. They almost took over the world, and the mafias of the world had to gang up to stop them. Oh, this is more of a Star 40 episode. I'm not going to get into. I don't want to get into. You guys in the chat room, make sure that we keep this all Star 40 and fluffy. We don't want to turn this into deep theology of Armageddon being over and stuff. Kind of we do. Japanese coal does look good though, huh? I guess all coal looks cool, man. That's coconut shell coal. Activated carbon, that'll keep you from dying if you eat poison. They use it for dehumidification and Also, air purifications in bathrooms. You know what I mean. Here's 4 sticks of vine charcoal and 4 sticks of compressed charcoal. They're different, but cool, man. Look, a charcoal pencil. What more do you want from burnt wood? That's not a fascista, but very handy. That's charcoal. When did they do all this? What has this got to do with anything? Monkeys and medicinal plants. I guess there was a BBC documentary series called Clever Monkeys. And in one of their episodes, they talk about pharmacoznazi, pharmacoznazi, Zoopharmacoznazi, the study of self-medication in animals. It's a growing field. I like to think I led the cutting edge 6 years ago, and I talked about eating diatomaceous earth and certain clays that have, you know, hey, everything liquid is basically is Christ's blood. Everything solid is his body. Oh no, I'm going way too far. Anyway, these guys do that, man. They know how to get rid of parasites, ward off bacterial and fungal infections. Monkeys working together to observed fur rubbing with millipedes, whatever that has to do with anything. Group protection from parasites. Swallow large seeds if they have, just to scrape them off. That sounds very, better than, well, it's the same ingredient that used to be found in these, but now they use synthetic substitutes. Here we go with these same type of eating dirt. The same reasons. Clay, it's yummy and good for you. Even us humans, although we're more closely related to mushrooms than we are to a monkey. Remember what the Rolling Stones said? Hey, I'm a monkey. Well, no, you're just a monkey man. Well, that is another one of these short videos that I make now every now and then because, 3 hours is a long time. But I think I did maybe help Conspiracy RS because I think that those confusion in the roundhouse and everything, it's still all mud floody Starforts, but they were used to power the Starforts. And all that fake thing about the guy running around with the candlelight and everything at night going, all's well. No, it was Starforts, baby, all the way. Now, some of you people still in the chat room, don't let me forget about that terra patra, that dirt that you can make and is found all over the world too. I still want to get into that, but mostly Bible study, Lord willing, tonight about the golden age past. And if you like the Starfort stuff, I hope you come back for the theology. In the meantime, it's still a flat earth nation. Mud flood was Armageddon. I'm never, ever, and neither are my friends, going to tell you anything else because we're trying to prove we have your best interest at heart. Amen. Hallelujah. And one